All right, we're here today to show you guys how to take out a spark plug, and we're gonna check the gap, and then we're gonna reinstall it. It's actually a pretty easy task to do. It's a good thing to do on your own vehicle to check and make sure that all your spark plugs are not worn out, over gapped. If you have a spark plug that has too big of a gap, sometimes you could have a misfire where the spark is not traveling from the ground electrode to the center electrode. So I have a couple tools out here. I have our spark plug socket, our spark plug gappers. We got some electrical tape for for a special reason. I'm going to show you that. We got our anti-seize, some dielectric grease, and we do have a torque wrench here also. So our first step is we're going to remove the coil. So now on this vehicle we have a 2014 Ford Focus, and this is an inline 4, and it is a coil on plug system. So we have our ignition coils mounted on top of each spark plug, and luckily they're right here on the top of the engine, easy to access. So I'm going to start with this number 1 cylinder right here, and I'm going to remove the coil, and you take out this one 8mm bolt. Luckily these bolts come out really easily. So there's our bolt. Set that off to the side. Our next thing is we're going to unplug our coil. You have to be careful because sometimes these get really brittle when they're really old, and you got to undo the red safety lock, and sometimes you just pull that back, and then you're going to pinch this part here on the plug and pull it out. And there's our 3-terminal plug. This would be the male end of the plug, that would be the female end. Now here's our coil. These usually you might have to wiggle them sometimes, but we'll be able to pull that out. And there's our ignition coil and our boot. And this end is what makes contact with the top of the spark plug inside. So we'll take this, we're going to set this off to the side. Now we have our spark plug socket. And you can see the spark plug down there. You also want to make sure there's no dirt down there or any debris, because when we take out the spark plug, we don't want that to go on the cylinder. So we have our spark plug socket. What makes it a spark plug socket is the rubber insert. So this rubber insert allows the spark plug not to fall out of the socket. We have our extension. It makes it really easy to get at it. Now I'm going to put the socket on the extension. This is also a swivel. But I'm going to take a little bit of electrical tape, just a little piece, and I'm going to put it over to keep my extension from falling off. Sometimes when you're working on a vehicle, your spark plug socket will get stuck on its spark plug, and when you're trying to pull it out, this extension will pop out, and sometimes the socket can get trapped. So right now we're going to make sure we have the right size. I'm going to put it down here. See, as I'm trying to wiggle it, I'm making contact with the spark plug. I'm going to grab my ratchet here. We do have a 3/8 drive extension, so I'm going to use a 3/8 drive ratchet. Make sure we're on loosening. Put this on here. Now you always want to try to pull towards you to break it loose. Luckily this one wasn't too tight. We're going to loosen this up. Now I can kind of use my fingers because it comes out so easily. Keep going. Okay, now, drop the spark plug down there. So now what we can do is we can bring over our magnet. And our magnet, we can look down there and we can see the tip of our spark plug, and we can easily grab it. So here's our spark plug. If you look at this one here, you'll see our ground electrode at the top, our center electrode in the middle. It's a really fine piece of metal. Here's your ceramic here at the top, and you can see some dielectric grease from a past service right here. We're going to wipe that off. And also it is a Ford spark plug, so for this vehicle this is probably the original spark plug for this car. So also you can see the threads. There's a little bit of orange color here. That could signal a little bit of corrosion starting. What we're going to do is when we put it back together, a good recommendation is putting a little anti-seize on those threads, which I have here. So our next thing, now that we've taken it out, is we're gonna check the gap of the spark plug. So we have our two gappers here. This one is used for checking the gap, and this one here is important to have because you can use this to adjust the gap size. So to check it, I'm gonna take the tip of the spark plug and put it in between there, and as I bring this around, I'm gonna stop at whatever spot it doesn't wanna go any farther. So right there, we're at 0.40, sorry, 0.040. That stands for 40 thousandths of an inch. This is in inches. So we're at 40 thousandths. Now for this vehicle, you might say, I don't know what my gap is supposed to be. Why are we checking it? Well, our specification that we looked up on our system ProDemand says that our gap for the Duratec engine should be 0.035 inches. So we know that our gap was 0.040, so we were 5 thousandths too big. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use our adjuster and we're gonna move our ground electrode nice and easy, you don't wanna break these, down to close the gap ever so slightly. And you don't wanna do this too much because you don't want the gap to close, you don't wanna close the gap. So now we're gonna check it again. And see, we got a little bit less there. We're at about 38 thousandths. So I'm gonna go just a little bit more. That was probably a little too much there, so just takes a couple times here. It is a really important thing to do, though. It might seem time consuming, but right there we're just under 0.035. Just try it one more time and then we'll call that all good. Okay, so that's exactly 0.030. I went the wrong way. Once again, we're back at 0.038. So again, this does take a delicate hand. So I gotta go in. And you never wanna try to bang this on anything to try to close that gap. You don't wanna hit anything with it. So I think we're pretty close now. I think we're gonna call that good. We're gonna go ahead and reinstall our spark plug. So to reinstall our spark plug, you don't wanna drop it down the spark plug hole. You don't wanna just drop it in there. You could cause this gap to get changed. So what we have to do is now we have a rubber insert. We're gonna put the spark plug in, and it shouldn't fall out. And we're gonna carefully set it down on the spark plug hole, and now we're gonna rotate it. You always wanna start these by hand. You never wanna put your ratchet on there and try tightening it. That could cause those threads to cross thread. Now we were gonna leave the anti-seize off just for this vehicle right now. It is a good recommendation though, as these spark plugs can get stuck inside the cylinder head sometimes. So now we have our spark plug inserted. We're gonna take our socket and put it back on there. And for this vehicle, there was a torque specification for this spark plug on how tight it's supposed to be. We did look that up on our service information, and we found that it was supposed to be 133 inch-pounds. Inch-pounds is a unit of torque, and it's a little bit smaller than foot-pounds. So we have our 3/8 drive torque wrench here, and we're gonna set it to, when you turn this handle here, we are gonna set it to, we're at 130, and 3 more clicks, we're at 133 inch-pounds. So now, when we go to tighten our spark plug, we've already tightened it by hand first. And now, we're gonna bring our torque wrench and you're gonna listen for like a clicking sound. And when you hear that clicking sound, you only wanna hear it one time. You don't wanna go any farther than the clicking sound because that would over torque the spark plug. So right now you can do this as many times as you'd like, and this torque wrench is not gonna allow you to go past 133 inch-pounds. So now our spark plug is torqued. We're gonna take our extension out. We're gonna put our torque wrench away. Our next step, to offer a little bit more protection with our spark plugs and boots, is we're gonna use some dielectric grease. This grease is safe to use on rubber components and anything electronic. And what it's gonna do is keep a barrier for moisture and corrosion that can creep down inside the valve cover down here and cause any issues with spark. So what we're gonna do is just put a small little amount of this right at the end of the spark plug boot. And you really only need a small amount. When you put your coil back on the vehicle, this is gonna help seal to the spark plug. And you gotta kinda listen, sometimes you can hear it pop, and you kinda do wanna hear that. And when you push it all the way down, you wanna make sure that your boot is all the way seated onto the spark plug. So we see our coils pushed all the way down. Our retaining bolt here is gonna be used to keep the coil from vibrating or popping out. We'll go ahead and start that by hand. And I have my ratchet, and we're just gonna tighten it nice and gentle, like that. Now we notice that our coil does not move anymore. It's not gonna vibrate. Now our coil's inserted, and now we're gonna install our plug. All you have to do is carefully, you also wanna look sometimes and make sure there's no debris in there, any dirt, and you wanna plug it in and listen for the click. This one, you may not have heard it. Another thing, we're gonna put our safety lock back on, that little red clip. When you push that forward, that's gonna keep this installed no matter if you pinch or not, the clip. So right now, if I'm trying to take it off, it's not gonna come off because of our safety locks. They do that on many connectors on an automobile, so you have to make sure when you take those in and out, you don't break them. Sometimes they get really brittle. So now we have our spark plug installed, we have it torqued, and this vehicle should run really good when we try to start it back up.